Hi guys, welcome to today's video. Today is part 2 of this awesome transformation of a desk into 2 nightstands, and if you want to see part 1, which is where I prepped it, I separated, took it apart and did all of that stuff to get it ready up to this point, I will link that below so that you guys can check it out. But today, let's get to our project. Okay, so first let me give you a quick little recap of where we left off last week in case you haven't watched that video, but then again, go watch the whole thing because there's a lot of good info there. In last week's video, I showed you how I separated the top, then we cut off the middle with a sawzall. To separate it, we sawed off all the connecting pieces, then we patched the whole thing up. We took off any loose veneer and then we made the tops, sanded it and got it ready to this point. Alright, so now that we are at this point, we need to paint it. And the cats are all over the place. Anyway, I was really inspired by this beautiful color, and I decided to ask you guys your opinion too, because I was leaning towards this olive green that was made by Joile paints. And so you guys actually agreed with me, and that's the color that we're gonna go with. If you guys are familiar with my channel, you know that Dixie Belle paints is my go-to paint. Not that I don't like any other paints, I actually like quite a few, but I really love this one. It's my go-to. I have all the colors and I actually carry at my store, and that is the only reason why I'm mixing my color instead of buying the Joile paint. If you want the color that I was inspired by, I will put the name of it down below so you guys can look it up. But anyway, that is the only reason why I'm mixing my colors rather than buying it. So using color theory, I started with black and green. My green was actually really blue tone, and that's why I have this yellow to warm it up to kind of get me closer to that color that I'm looking for, which is a little bit on the warmer side. I am testing a little bit of color blending, and once I tested it on my piece of furniture, I went ahead and added quite a bit more so that I can mix my entire batch. That is something that is very important when you guys are trying some paint. Test it out on a scrap piece of wood or on whatever you're using so that you can see how it's going to look like when it's dry. It can make a huge difference. I also want to show you guys the difference between using natural bristle brushes versus synthetic, so that you guys have an idea whenever you're picking your brush if you're going to be painting something by hand. I know that it's not feasible for everyone to buy an air compressor and do all that stuff, especially if you're just painting 1 or 2 things. Okay, so let me show you the brush that I like. This is the Worcester Shortcut Pro, and I got this at Home Depot for like $7. I've had it for over a year and it's still going strong. It retains its shape. I think it's a little bit on the firmer side. There's different colors on the handle. So this is the green that super casually matches my nails. And I like to wet my brush just like you would with a makeup sponge. You want it to soak up some moisture so it doesn't just soak up all of the paint at once, and it also helps it to glide easier, and that is my trick. I like to have a little Mr. Water bottle handy so that I can wet my paint and work it in. I first slap it on and go in every direction as much as I can so I can get coverage, and then I will go ahead and wet it and go glide gently across so that I don't have any cut off brush strokes. Another tip that may seem pretty obvious if you have been painting for a while, but it's worth to mention, is that you want to start by cutting in. So I like to reach to paint all the pieces that are really hard to get, do all the cutting in so that I don't have to come back and leave those little tiny brush strokes, because at the end I can just glide from one end to the other without stopping. So cutting in first and then do one gliding motion, very smooth from one end to the other. And here's my very thin first coat. I don't usually judge paint by the first coat because you generally need more than one to come back and get full coverage. Okay, so next we want to sand, and you want to do this in between every coat that you do with natural and synthetic brushes, because it will reduce all of those brush strokes that you will have, and it also will knock off any debris that may have fallen into your wet paint, kind of like cat hair, dog hair, human hair, and whatever pieces of debris. And the reason why I don't like to leave it just until the end is because sometimes you'll have larger little pieces. I mean, not big huge pieces, but like something a little bit larger that when you take it off with the sanding, it will remove from the bottom and it will kind of leave a hole or an indentation of where it was. So it's best to do it in between coats so that you can make sure you're patching those up and evening out your coats and your brush strokes with the sandpaper as you go. I'm gonna wipe off all the dust from the sanding, and then I'm ready for my second coat. For the second coat, I'm gonna do the same thing as before. I'm going to apply the paint in every direction. I am not worried about where it's going. I am only worried about covering every single piece, every single corner, every little bit of that top, and then I worry about gliding my brush across to get smooth, very gentle brush stroke. For the natural bristle brush, I am going to use Joile paint brush, and this one is a 1.5 inch brush. I love it because natural bristle brush tend to pick up a lot more paint, so whenever you're brushing in between, it's easier to just go on one smooth brush stroke from one end to the other without having to constantly dip into your paint. The only downside is that the bristles tend to be a little bit stiffer, and so if you put too much pressure into your paint, you're going to leave more pronounced brush strokes, and that is what we're trying to avoid. So with a synthetic brush, you just want to make sure that you go extra light on your last coat when you're evening out all the way across. So essentially I do the same steps, it's just that I am a little bit more careful with a natural bristle brush than I would be with a synthetic, and I'm always more mindful that the brush strokes are more pronounced with a natural bristle brush. However, you can still achieve a very smooth finish. I'm going to pause the video right here because I want you to see this line that formed whenever I press too hard with my brush. Do you see it on the right hand corner? That just means that I went too firmly with my brush and I just have to adjust. I also like to have a wet rag on hand when I'm painting so that I can quickly clean up any messes that I have, especially on the edges of the drawers whenever I'm trying to get just that little lip and clean up the rest. Alright, and now for the exciting part, we're going to revive those handles that came with our nightstands. They are actually quite beautiful. They are just old and like grungy and dirty. And so what I'm going to do is that I'm going to clean them off, and then I'm going to spray paint them with this brass color paint that I like a lot, so that it matches some lamps that we have in our bedroom that I already did a makeover with, and I used the exact same color. The next step will be to seal our piece, and I'm going to go with mint wax. And the only reason I'm doing this is because I have a lot of it. I have a whole tub that I haven't really used that much. I have tried Sweet Pickins milk paint or Sweet Pickins wax, DIY wax, Dixie Belle wax, Wax. I've tried quite a few, and to be honest, there's not much of a difference other than the smell and the composition of them. So Wax has quite a bit more VOCs than the other natural brands, but it's still not terrible. So I'm going to use it because I already have it, and also because I'm keeping these pieces for ourselves, and so I will be able to monitor it and see how it holds up throughout months and months and months and even years if I wanted to look into that. But again, no particular reason. You can pick whatever brand of wax and use that. You guys, waxing is another area where the natural bristle brushes really shine. So I like to use this Paint Pixie brush. It is a little bit on the pricey side, but it's really well made, really good quality, and I use it a ton. The reason why I like it so much is because since it's natural bristle, it's a little bit stiffer, it's really dense, and it really makes it easy to hold so that I can apply the wax. Of course, you can just use a rag to apply the wax. I've done it a couple times, but I find that it's easier to glide whenever I have a brush. So this is my brush of choice. So super easy. You're going to apply the wax throughout the entire thing and wait a couple minutes for it to dry, depending on the instructions on your can. It's usually about 15 to 20 minutes, and then you can buff off the excess with a soft lint-free cloth, and then you can reapply multiple times. I like to do 3 coats on the tops of flat surfaces just because we usually tend to sit cups on it. The cats like to walk on nightstands for some reason, so I want it to be more durable. Okay, and now for the more exciting part, and it is to put our handles onto our drawers, and we finally get to see how the entire project looks and be proud of our accomplishments. And be proud that we saved this piece from going into the landfill into a new life, a new home in a very modern looking world. And that is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching part 2 of this makeover. Part 1 will be linked in the description box and also on the end screen whenever you finish watching this video. I hope to see you guys soon. Don't forget that we do DIY videos, thrift flips, house makeovers, and we have 2 adorable kitties and 1 adorable old puppy that like to participate in all of our projects. We'll see you soon. Bye! And I decided to turn it into 2 nightstands. Biggie.